And we are live. What's up, guys? This is Ruben Dua from Dubb's podcast Connection Loop. And today I've got Richard Moore with me. So, Richard Moore comes to us from Great Britain, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And I've had a chance to kind of check out some of Richard's content online. And his vibe's really interesting, very interesting purpose. We were just actually talking about how adversity, trials, tribulations is so much of the form for our path and our purpose and kind of what potentially motivates us and what helps us to actually overcome a lot of burdens and hurdles. So, Richard, I kind of love to understand what you're up to, what your purpose is, and really what your origin story is.
Thank you. Yeah, and firstly, thanks for having me on the show. It's really flattering to have that you invited me. Yeah, I feel that there's kind of a couple of things I'm working on at the moment, and my business itself trains corporates trains their sales teams on how to sell and persuade. And I work a lot with those involved in marketing in traditional sense and helping with online engagement, things like that. And that stems all the way through to a kind of an agency model around a whole done for you approach to online positioning and so on. But I also work with an events kind of initiative I started back in 2018 called Entrepreneur Business Live. And it's important to me, this, because the events are all over the world and they're designed to leverage attention and engagement and essentially use these techniques that I coach to get lots of people in the room and drive all of the money into local charities. So it's really something I feel has mileage, and it's wonderful that people are kind of taking it and running with it. And so there's a lot of great new events coming up really soon. And my kind of it's all about doing good, and it's interesting because as you get a bit older, you gain perspectives on things. And talking about origin stories, and I've always had certain things in my life that have directed me in certain ways. And I'm 40 this year, so as a child of the 80s, I had the kind of upbringing you'd expect, where it's you're conditioned that there's a certain route one must take in order to achieve a level of what's perceived societally as success. And so it's university because that's the way to go, and it's a job in a suit in an office in London. That's it. Doesn't matter what a job is, but it's just as long as it's there. And it's taken me a long time to kind of unbind myself from that sense of direction, because it was drummed into me, and there's nothing wrong with it because that's the world we're in back then. But then certain things happen, and so I went up from the age of 11. I have two sisters, but from the age of 11, my parents separated, and I didn't see my father for another 25 years. And so my mum, with a part-time job, raised us. And then I did my corporate job and did really well in the city. But then I pivoted out about 7 years ago to run my own thing, because certain bad stuff happened in life. I had some family members pass away, and I also had my first daughter was born as well, so it really mattered to me to make sure I was present. That was something that was important. And so all these kind of things fed together, and there's been plenty of adversity, but using it for good, to drive you and give you perspective and feel like you're to recognize where you're doing well and where we're very fortunate is important. And we've all had another shot in the arm of this week with Kobe Bryant passing away. It really affected me again, and this kind of thing keeps reminding us that you need to make the most of whatever you've got and leave something decent for those after you.
So why do you think a lot of people, maybe most people, don't really embrace this idea of adversity and how it can be used for good, how it can be good for providing perspective, providing catalyst? What do you think the reason for that is, that we get stuck in that?
Yeah, I mean, I I'm really fascinated by, and am a student of in my own time, behavior and psychology. And I'm not trained in any way or anything like that, but by being in sales in different ways for 17 years, it's just, you spend a lot of time around people. And what's clear is that it's human and it is animal to have pain avoidance, and if bad stuff's happening or may happen, or we project that we may fall into bad places emotionally or otherwise, we as animals look to self-preserve and avoid those things. And it is easier to a degree for a while to bury one's head in the sand. And it's, I feel, only through going through some hard stuff that you realize when you pop out the other side that, and in fact, it's not when you pop out the other side, it's later still that you look back and reflect and realize that you've grown somewhat and that something's changed. Right. There's a process, there's going through the stuff, and you're not thinking, whatever it might be, you're not thinking, you're just doing, you're living, you're surviving. Then there comes the aftershock when you're like, wow, I've been through that. And often that is a moment when people implode a bit and they think about all the bad things that may have happened. But as I say, later still, you then arrive at your point where you're like, wow, I feel just that little bit more stronger and able to deal with things. And I think it takes time, and eventually enough adversity happens to everyone. And for some, perversely, it is a positive that they have it early on because it gets them more self-aware.
Yeah.
Sooner, and that having that early is, if we could all have a lot more self-awareness at the start, it would really make a difference.
Well, I think Rumi, this great Sufi poet, he said it best. He said, "Scars are where the light enters."
Yes. I'm actually in the literal sense. I'm really proud. I had a number of operations a few years back, and I've got like 8 or 9 scars all across my stomach from the keyhole surgery. I'm kind of proud of them in a weird way because I'm like, that's stuff I've gone through, and that's my growth. Is that, and I suppose I'm quite romantic about this kind of thing now. So I do feel I have the right attitude when bad stuff's happening, because I know I'll grow through it, and it means you get to focus on getting through it and handling it, but at the same time, that there is always something that can be learned from it, and I'm kind of proud of those scars I have on my stomach.
Well, I think they're constant reminders. I mean, I think whether it's a literal scar on our body or it's a metaphorical scar of a hardship that we went through, I think it's so important to stay close to that and to not. Yeah. A lot of people say, forget and let things go. I think it's the opposite that's true. I think that it's important to lean into kind of the tribulations that we've gone through so that we can evolve from them. Because if we don't evolve from them, what I believe happens, and this has happened to me a number of times, is that they enter the subconscious mind, and if you don't address them, then they haunt you. I mean, that's the definition of skeletons in the closet. It's unaddressed personal issues. Baggage,
And I think, that should be revised, that idea of let it go. And it should be more, people should be more thinking about choosing their battles, because some things should be let go, and they typically are the petty things in the moment. And it's fascinating that some people will focus and have huge anxiety about little things that, and from anyone's perspective, just don't matter because their perspective isn't right. And you're totally right. It's good to return to those places in your head and just have a little bit of gratitude and remember what you've been through. It really matters. So yeah, I fully agree.
There's this idea which is very prevalent in several cultures. Really, it's probably a personality thing, but it's this idea of saving face. And cultures, people, families, they have big belief that we should all save face. We should not be transparent about the challenges that we've gone through in our lives. People don't need to know about that. Personal, professional, getting fired, getting divorced, getting cancer, getting beat up, getting bullied, all sorts of stuff that we go through in our lives. A lot of people feel like you should not disclose that because it makes you vulnerable, it makes you weak and susceptible to criticism, And the problem with that, I think, is that then we have to hold on to that inside of us and we don't release it.
With Dubb, you can easily send your business videos from Gmail, LinkedIn, CRMs, and so many more places, but you don't have to take my word for it.
Absolutely perfect.
Screen records, landing pages that can really help businesses to grow.